environment is enjoyable, making sure that they want to turn up and play, I think is massive. I've seen it loads of times in different environments where you can tell the players aren't enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying football, what is the point in playing it?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode I was delighted to welcome Coach Rob Porter. Rob does some excellent coaching. He does quite a lot of sharing of his content and experiences amongst his social media. So it was great to connect with him and really talk about what is shared out on the socials, coaching topics, contemporary issues, how to engage players, and then we delved into it. The common theme and message that came out in this interview was enjoyment, and that's what it's all about for the players, is making it enjoyable. We both have experiences in working in academy, grassroots and club football, so it comes a time when it stops becoming enjoyable. And even though players have their own personalities, their own aspirations, their own goals, as well as coaches, football's there to be enjoyed, and that's exactly what we need to make it at all times, regardless of the aspiration, regardless of the level. We have to meet the needs of the players, and sometimes the players may not realise it, but we need to make these environments, these training sessions as enjoyable as possible. We want to maintain, grow and develop players and improve them at all points, and they can really do this within an enjoyable capacity and environment. We spoke about looking at the player, positive mindsets and how to develop this, beneficial to the work at all ages to us as coaches, so being able to work at all age groups or having experience of working at these age groups really allows us to understand the player, take different sessions, different designs, take away different aspects and really apply it to all the different age groups that we work with. We then spoke about sharing resources as a coaching community. We don't have to hide or share resources. We're trying really hard to create a coaching community whereby we can share each other's ideas, the resources, the plans that's out there. All we want to do is work collectively and unitedly to develop all the players possible that's out there. They're all in the game of football for the same reason, and that's all to grow, enjoy and develop. As I quote Rob, if you're not enjoying football, why are you playing it? And that is a very good question to put into perspective, and it's one that as coaches we want to try and instill in our players, and a question that we should look back on ourselves and maybe tailor it to the sense, if you're not enjoying football, why are you coaching it? Or if your sessions aren't enjoyable, why are the players attending? And there's a lot to take away from that, and you can frame it in so many different ways, and it gives you a good reflection point. But we're all in this together. It's not a competition with each other. All we want to do is focus on improving players. This was a great interview, and Rob has plenty of experiences. He has a great mindset, a great outlook in terms of working with his players, and it was great to finally speak to him after being connected on socials for so long. I hope you enjoy this episode. There's a lot to take away from it. It's a great interview, and Rob is fantastic on his social media, so really reach out to him. I know he's always talking about his experiences, and we want to just grow this coaching community. But this is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, LinkedIn and Twitter. It is TRC podcast _ on Twitter, and it is the Reflective Coach podcast everywhere else. I hope you can drop me a like, a follow and a subscribe, as well as a comment if you could. It's always really helpful, and I look forward to bringing you more episodes here in 2023, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. Take a lot away from this and enjoy this episode. Coach Luca.
Yeah, massively. I do find that sort of when we're in those situations where it's going, wow, it's brilliant. I think with experience, those downs don't become so down, if you know what I mean. You know you've been there before, you know you've experienced. I suppose it's easy to recognise those points and and get through them a bit easier. You know that actually there is always light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely, and coming through that tunnel can be a difficult thing, both for a player and a coach in that sense. And as coaches, the really important thing is, I think, a perspective, and that's something that I've learned and that I take with me everywhere. And it's perspective of the parents, families, carers, what the club need, what the coach needs, and what the player needs. And thinking in the sense of both coach and player is a really important thing for us when we're approaching our sessions, approaching what we do week to week, in a sense, because we want to become player focused and ensure that we are player focused, which are the key fundamentals when we are coaching.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's, I mean, the most important thing out of everything is the player. At the end of the day, making sure that environment is enjoyable, making sure that they want to turn up and play, I think is massive. I've seen it loads of times in different environments where you can tell the players aren't enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying football, what is the point in playing it? You know, and that's one of my sort of real key things is enjoyment. On my UEFA B, the tutor said, out of interest, should all football be enjoyable? Or is it just youth football? Or is it just, should academy of football be enjoyable? I said, yeah, at the end of the day, football's there, you play football to enjoy yourself, at the end of the day. And that's something I always come back to be honest with you.
100%, mate, and it's different to sort of see it at the different levels, and that's a good question. Should it be enjoyable at every level? Because I'm working closely with seniors, and as much time with the 19s, you sort of I'm having that outlook on the seniors, and as much as they're trying to push for titles, promotion, win the reserves league, win the seconds, the first league. When you look at the reserves, some of the reserves are just there to play Saturday football because they love football. They don't want to have this intense environment, and sometimes the pressure is put on them, understandably in a way, but when it comes to a week and they're just choosing to play for the thirds, it's for that enjoyment aspect, really.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. As I said, that's where it all comes back to at the end of the day. I work at Grassroots, I work at development centre and academy level, so I kind of see it from all the different perspectives, to be honest with you. And at the end of the day, a kid is a kid. At the end of the day, whether they wear a grassroots top or whatever an academy top, they're still a child at the end of the day. And their needs are still the same.
Absolutely, and I've got a similar background where you can see that difference between ADC, grassroots, academy, and how the mindset of a player can change. But when we chip away and we actually get back through to it, they are a child, and if they are in an academy and they sign a contract, and sometimes this is where the harsh reality and decision making comes into it. But we have to remember, if it doesn't work out for them at academy and they get released at 13, 14, and then they don't get signed back to academy, or they don't get a scholarship, or they don't have that route back in to become a pro in that sense, what have they really gained? Do they look back and go, I gave everything but I didn't really enjoy it? Because we have to make sure that they do enjoy it, because they only have that childhood, those years once, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, I know. Happy memories is another thing. At the end of the day, we want to create memories where players can look back, whether they've made it as a professional or whether they give up football at 16 or whether they continue playing as an adult in a grassroots environment. In the day, you want those memories where they look back and they can say they've enjoyed their time, and it's nice when you meet up with players in the street, sort of like some of the players I coached to start with, and now adults. They're in university, they're in full time jobs, and when you meet up with them and you have a chat and they go, oh, this was so good when we did this, and stuff like that. It's fantastic. It shows that you've had a positive impact on them.
And that's what we need. So the coaching pathway isn't an easy pathway, and a lot of coaches come in, they do their degrees or they do their licenses, and they use a lot of teams as a stepping stone to get where they need and want. And that's a kind of difficult thing when you look at players where they have a succession of coaches which come and change. But when you have an impact like yourself, and you want to look at the players and know that you're there for here and now as well as long term, it's about being an impactful coach, and that's the sort of perspective and outlook that I try to have. Every kid that I coach want to have an impact, so they remember me if no matter what, and that they enjoyed their sessions, and that if they knew they had me in a few years' time later on, that they look forward to it. And some coaches just come and go, and that can be really difficult for players, and that can really hamper their progress and their own journey and pathway.
Yeah, massive. We had a player the other day who's gone from Oxford to they signed with MK Dons. And they said, "Oh, if we knew you were going to be coaching this season, you and the other coach, we would have stayed with Oxford," which I thought was quite nice. Which shows obviously that during that player's journey, I've had a positive impact on them. The fact that they want to be coached by you. So yeah, just those little things are nice to hear. To be honest with you, it shows that what you're doing is good.
Absolutely, and you can even set a player up. I know I was talking to a player who was in pre-academy, he's now at under 11s, so there's been that 4-year progress. But his dad was texting me, and he was saying how much he enjoyed the coaching, the son while he was in the pre-academy, and that he remembers all the times that we had. And he is progressing now, and I think that I've set him up to progress and have that enjoyment. But that wasn't I wasn't stood there going, I'm going to progress you so in 4 years' time I can look like the one I progress you. It's because I gave him that commitment and he enjoyed it, and he's looking back going, do you know what, I've enjoyed that. And then I've gone, well, do you know what, because he's actually enjoyed it, naturally I've set him up without having that objective, even though I had to for the academy, because of my peer commitment and looking at the person side rather than the player, the strategy, the framework that goes with it. And being player centered really helped me deliver all that naturally without having it as tick boxes for me every session that I went into.
Yeah, this is it. I think the human aspect is still the most important thing. I've been quite lucky, like the last couple of seasons, there's players I've coached who've gone to make first team debuts. A player I coached last season has gone on to, she was captaining England under 16s this Monday, which is fantastic. But the most important thing is the other side of it for me. Those are great achievements, but as a coach, developing players and creating those good environments and good memories is just important and stuff like that.
100%, and those memories, they can be taken away very quickly, especially when it comes into academy football, because there's such intense environment and pressure that surrounds it every session, and then when that adds up over a few years for a child, it is insane. And I know that I ended up coaching the academy for 2 years, and I've stepped away for the last year or so, and that's because I stopped enjoying the academy because of how intense it was. And just thinking of that for players who are age 7 to 16 in that framework and that pathway, it's a real difficult one for them to give up their childhood and give up memories and to be at competition with realistically who they see as friends. And when parents start becoming a little bit political and trying to push more than the other, it's like that Channel 4 documentary for the academy at Crystal Palace, and you start seeing them fall out, and it's just, you can relate to it so realistically because we've seen it.
Yeah, that was a bit of an eye opener. That was, to be honest with you. Yeah, I felt quite sorry for some of those kids. Um, but yeah, I think it was quite funny. Yesterday, I was talking to a guy with my day job, and he was saying, "Oh, his son's just getting into football," and he was saying, "Oh, we're going to look at either this team or that team." I said, "Look, the most important thing is the coach, because at the end of the day, if you end up with a coach who makes it enjoyable against a coach who's screaming and shouting, that's going to be much better for your kids." And he turned around, he said, "Do you know what? When I was growing up, when I was playing, all I remember was being shouted at and doing laps to the pitch and stuff like that." So it's quite. I thought it was quite funny, to be honest with you, the fact that, and I think that was probably a lot of people's childhood memories. I think coaching has come a long way since then, to be honest with you, where we are more player centred and it's, yeah, from the good old, well, maybe not the good old days of laps and bleep tests and line drills and stuff like that. We have come a long way.
Massively, and memories and experiences can shape and stay with a player. I know that I stopped playing after my junior years and I tried to get back into it at 16, and then I fell into the seniors category and I just stopped altogether then, and then I went into the coaching, and I don't miss playing whatsoever, but I wish that I had more of a better junior pathway. And as you say, it's progressed a lot since then. I remember a coach who had the team that I joined. I remember standing on the side of one week. I just started football. I wasn't the most technically gifted of players. I wasn't one of the greatest players. So I found myself on the bench quite a lot of times. But when I first started, I remember standing next to him. It was a league game. And he said, "If this carries on, I'm going to walk into this fucking tree in a minute." And I was just stood there as like an 8-year-old, just staring at this fully grown bloke going, "Is this what football is?" And
Yeah,
it stayed with me ever since I was 8 years of age, and that was like 18 years ago. But it was such a vivid memory as if it happened last week. And I was like, how did that set me up for football realistically?
I had, when I started coaching, I sort of started with my son's grassroots team, and I kind of got to see both ends of the coaching spectrum, because there was the manager who, really good old boy, really nice bloke, but he was proper old school, throwing the ball up and getting two kids trying to header it, like 1v1, just throwing the ball and, let them smash into each other. And then the other coach he was doing his youth mods and he was very much sort of game based. And so I got to see sort of what kind of works and what doesn't work really right from the start, to be honest with you. I think that shaped me quite well for sort of everything to come, to be honest with you.
And it's good to have that shaped experience and to see both ends. And I know where I've been in grassroots football, I haven't got a kid involved, but I ended up managing a team for 6 years. And a couple of the dads pulled along and came along. And the one you could see he had coached before, and he said that he's worked with seniors, but he had only ever worked with adults, and that's what he does in a day job. But as much as it's great that he wanted to come on board, I had to change his mindset in the terms of working with children. So how he approached them, so leaning down on his knee when he was talking to them, being a bit more calmer, not being as intense, not having the run the lap element which he used to do with the old seniors. And so it became more of a mentoring process, but he's adapted really well and he's enjoying it. And when you get a parent who's on board because they want to coach and they want to make those decisions, you can support them. It's great for them because, you know, the grassroots games rely heavily on parents like yourselves, but not all parents have an open mindset or an open mind like you. And they can find it really difficult, and you know, understanding that they can find it difficult having to go from managing a team, picking, choosing, dealing with parents, all these other things that come with it can be really a difficult element with grassroots football. But when they want to adapt and have that open mind, it's fantastic. And I remember coaching at under sevens, and I was watching one team, and they had a quite a big coach, big bearded guy. Nothing wrong with that, but because he was intense to the kids in the way he spoke to them, that's how he was perceived and seen. I remember watching a game, and he dragged off a boy, literally at under sevens, 4v4, dragged him off because he conceded a goal, literally grabbed him and pulled him off the pitch. And I was like, because he's not seen as this right coach, he's more seen as this disciplinarian who's going to drag you off if you concede. You could see the fear in his 7-year-old's eyes just looking at him, and they're shaking as he was like saying things to him. And it was just because of his demeanour and the way he come across. He could have been someone so different, but because of his old school ways, I felt so sorry for those kids.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because with the level 1 now going online, you know, a lot of coaches starting now will start coaching players without ever seeing a live session, ever seeing a tutor doing it, ever having any interaction with other coaches. And I just can't see that being a good thing, to be honest with you. You know, even from the social aspect, the amount of coaches I still speak to now and keep in contact with from courses is really good. But that other side where, you know, if you watch Premier League and you watch Klopp shouting at the ref and you watch Conte running players if they're sick and stuff like that, and that's what you go into to youth football with that sort of, wow, that's what I've seen in the Premier League, then it's not going to end well, to be perfectly honest with you, especially for the kids. And that's where I think coach education should be going the other way, where actually we're supporting coaches more rather than less. You know, because I've seen it over the years. The amount of coaches they do the level 1, and then that's the only interaction they ever have with the coaching pathway. Which, don't get me wrong, without those adults there, we're not going to have enough teams for kids to play in, and they are facilitating kids playing football. But at the end of the day, I think the FA and coaching as a whole really sort of should be helping coaches more.
100% completely agree with you, and I know here in Wales we're a little bit different to England, so a lot of our league boards and FAs are voluntary based still, whereas you have a bit more football development officers and paid roles over in England. But we do have those safeguarding officers, etc., who come out and they regulate the game, which is good. But sometimes we don't always need that. We need a bit more mentoring, we need a bit more evaluation on coaches, we need more support. And as you say, it's literally, here you go, here's your certificate, here's your qualification, and off you go and get with it. And it's great because we can be thrown in the deep end and we learn along the way and we have to commit that much time. But not every coach does that, so therefore we're losing so many players realistically, and we're not giving the same chances because these coaches are not at the same levels, and they all vary because of obviously different motivations, different circumstances, etc. But if we were to mentor the coaches right across the board, at least then you're going to get some level of degree where you're going to have that quality right across where these players are impacted. And it goes back to, as we say, we only have these players once, they only experience these years so many times where they can only be 15 once, they're only 14 once, and as much as they can repeat a season, we don't get these years back with them. So if we can impact them as much as possible, then we're going to see more succession in the game, where we might have more semi-pro players or we might have more adult players, because I'm sure the amount of junior players that we have to then turn over into seniors football, the drop-off is probably quite high.
Yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, it's not bad people. It's just the lack of education. You do get the odd bad apple who you could tell that you shouldn't be screaming at kids. You shouldn't be making them run under sevens, running 10 laps to pitch and stuff like that. And they'll still do it. But most of it is wow many people who unfortunately haven't got the support. And for me, that's where maybe social media is a really good help. But if you're not sort of on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, then you're obviously missing out on something that could be quite beneficial there as well, in fairness.
100%, and it's that level of support, and it all depends on the club that you're with as well, because some clubs obviously are happy for you just to crack on and get with it. Some clubs might have that focus on seniors level, and the juniors then follow suit underneath, and whatever happens with juniors is whatever happens. But I know when I was chairman of a club and I was head of coaching, I tried to set up a CRP program, so a continued learning program. And the whole point was to try and mentor and impact coaches, try and give them strategies, try and give them frameworks, try and give them tools, resources, feedback, evaluations, and just anything that they could use to try and impact the kids at the club as much as possible, because these kids chose our club for a reason. We're having contact time with them, we're actually giving up our time to be with them. So I wanted to make that biggest impact as possible, and if I could support the coaches from my own experiences, where I've been in the ADC, where I've been in the academy, where I've done talent ID, where I know that I've attended courses higher than the other coaches, and I want to try and give back as much as possible, so I can try and support them. So as much as they might only have the motivation to do their level 1, if I can give them the tools and resources so that it can impact their coaching, then we can certainly engage with the players as much as possible so that they can enjoy it. But they can be presented with whatever option they want, whether they want to go down the academy route, or whether they want to progress in football, or whether at the end of the day they transition to another sport but they can come back to football at any point, or they utilise the skills that we've given them in another sport, or in life as well. And I think that was really important of what I tried to set up in the club there. But if other clubs took the same approach in trying to set up a mentoring program internally, it could be really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen sort of varying degrees, like grassroots clubs that I've coached at, where there's pretty much nothing, and they're sort of nomadic apart from maybe the odd sort of club meeting. But there are clubs out there, local clubs, who are doing some good stuff, where they're trying to get coaches together to do CPD, and they're having coaches come in and stuff like that, which is really good. So obviously on the other side of it, we had one a couple of weeks ago where it was at the training ground, and Carl Robinson, the first team manager, was taking part of it, and then the first team coaches were doing a practical part, and stuff like that is massively beneficial. But obviously with the grassroots, it's a different environment because it's not paid coaching, and the resources aren't the same. But as I said, we do need to do a better job of sort of helping coaches, especially newer coaches.
Absolutely, and that's hopefully the way the game can go. And if clubs are giving more support, and conversations we're having taking place with chairmen more consistently, then these sort of things could be equipped in clubs, and then football development officers or boards could come out and look at what clubs are doing collectively, and then they can put things on, and it could help towards CPD points. But there's a whole range of what could be done, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction, even here in Wales, and it's quite interesting to see what happens, and the differences between countries. But you've got a great background in terms of community coaching, academy coaching, and grassroots, and it's similar to mine. But when we're involved in each of those environments, they're all totally different, but they can all really help in different ways. So when you are grassroots coaching, you can relate to your community background, because you are working in the community essentially, but you need to know how to engage parents, how to engage community stakeholders, how to recruit players, how to get them involved, how to actually be out there in the community. And then you equip it with your academy experience by going, do you know what, they do this in the academy, we can bring this to grassroots. So I think having that all-rounded approach and experience can be really beneficial. And I know not every coach gets that, but when we're coaches like ourselves who have had that, we can really utilise it to our skill set, and as we say, our own lockers.
Yeah, as I said, there is differences, but it all comes back to the player, and the player is the player. It's they're still the same, but yeah, obviously there's different things, and there's stuff I would do in an academy environment I wouldn't do in a grassroots environment, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, it's still going there with a really positive mindset, putting on sessions that you think are going to be enjoyable for the players, that are also going to benefit them technically and tactically. But yeah, it definitely gives you different perspectives, and obviously it's also beneficial working with different ages as well. This season I worked from pre-academy up to under 14s. Last season it was up to devs, so under 23s. So yeah, I think, and as well as that, boys and girls. I still coach my son's grassroots team, although I sort of do the goalkeeper coaching now. But yeah, every different experience you can get in as a coach makes you a better coach, as long as you're reflecting on it. And that's the thing that it comes back to is if you. It was a quote from Shane Warne about Monty Panesar years ago, and he said, "Well, he hasn't played 50 Test matches. He's played one Test match 50 times. He's the same player after 50 Test matches he was after the first one because he hasn't developed." And I think that comes down to the same as a coach. You can do 7 sessions a week, but if you don't reflect and you don't grow from those experiences, then you are going to be the same coach 5 years later. So I think that's one thing. Is it's great getting out and doing loads of sessions, but you've also got to make sure that you're growing for those experiences as well and you're learning.
100%. And I know when I look back and reflect, was I the same? Am I still the same coach as I was at 16? And the answer is definitely no. And that's such a good answer. No's not always seen as a positive answer, but when I give no to that one, that is the most positive answer that I can give, because I know that I've progressed, I know that I've grown, but I've wanted to do it is because I've been pushed by my own players when I stood there looking at them, going, I want to give you the best experiences whilst you're under 8s, under 9s, which is something that I know that I didn't have, and what I didn't have as a player, I want to give you so much more now I'm coaching you. And I was able to use my bad experience to try and push that into a real positive for those players. And I know that I really wanted them to look at me and go, oh, I love being in Luca's sessions, or I'm so glad I'm part of this team, we want to stay part of the team for years to come. And that's why we ended up staying together for 6 years. And when you have that impact and you have that reflection, it can be so important. Not enough coaches reflect on what they do even week to week, and it's, oh, I'll just do this the next week, and I'll just bang out this session again. And there's nothing wrong with repeating sessions, but if you're just going, oh, I'll just do that one again, it can be so hard for a player then when they've been to school, they come out and they're like, oh, what, again? Really? Oh, this doesn't look organised. Whereas some of the other coaches like, right, we're going to do this, this and this, and sometimes that can be so energetic. And again, it comes down to that player, and when you think in their mindset and you reflect on them, it all comes back down to them at the end of the day, and we want to give them the most enjoyable experiences as possible.
That's a really interesting one because it's a fascinating balance where I've seen a lot of coaches saying that by doing the same practices but maybe just tweaking them slightly, you get the players switched on quicker, they don't have to think about getting the practice down quicker, and I suppose potentially there's more learning. But at the same time, I do find that if you do the same practices, even if you vary them, at points players get a bit bored and it gets repetitive. And so I think it's a balancing act because I do see that side of it where if you do massively different sessions every week and players are spending 5-10 minutes picking up every practice, they don't understand it, I suppose that could be limiting the learning. But on that flip side, if you do the same thing every week, it does get really boring. So, and I like myself to come up with my own practices where I try to think about, right, my group, their ability, and obviously what the session topic is, and try to sort of come up with stuff myself rather than look on the internet. And at the same time, there's nothing wrong with, doing the good old practice like the transfer game. Did that the other week. Obviously, players know it, got into it a lot quicker than maybe they would do with some practices. But in fairness, they haven't done it for 2 or 3 months, so it's not like, oh, they've done it last week. But yeah, it's finding that balancing act of it.
100%, it is that balancing act, and it's also understanding the players that we do have, and the moment that we can understand them, and sometimes having that consistency with them can be really important. And I know where I'm coaching under 19s now, I can see a lot of technical work which they haven't done in the younger years, and therefore it's hampered a bit of their psychological aspect because they struggle to understand, or their tactical elements because they don't understand how that transfers into a game or what's expected within a session. So it's really interesting to sort of look at that when they are old and how I go in and undo things, or I try to give those interventions to try and progress them. But I know Monday I was delivering a session, and as much as I sometimes take ideas online, which is great, but sometimes when I'm stood there and I'm just watching the session go by and I'm like, I can do that, I can do this. And then you start thinking of little things that you can do just by standing in there, and suddenly then you write it down, and then you've got a bank of resources, and you're turning into the next Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, I've gone from writing down my sessions on a piece of paper with a pen to doing it online. And I have it on my OneDrive, and it now means that, right, I have a look at what the session topic is for next week. I've got 4 seasons worth of sessions where I can look back and obviously, with the girls' academy sessions, I've got like a 3-page session plan, but also a review sheet as well. So I'll type that up a day or two after the session, so I can also see not only what the practices were, but what worked, what didn't work, and stuff like that. So that normally helps me quite a lot because I can have a look back and come up with some ideas. And some of the times it hasn't worked, but some of the times I've got some really good stuff there and then that I can sort out straight away, pretty much.
And, it's useful to have that bank of resources and certainly your own resources, because even when you pull things up, you're like, oh, do you know what, I could add this in and I can just progress it. And it really helps you, because then you sort of build your own way of coaching, your own approach, and it's the way that you want to use things to your advantage. And sometimes, I know when I was in the academy and our curriculum was completely changed, the academy manager said, we're going to do this, this and this. And I was like, okay, that's great. And we all had to then, deliver it in our own way, and I really enjoyed doing that, because he was like, as long as you follow it, but do it your way, that's the great thing. But then I remember when lockdown happened, there was a head of youth development phase, and he created session plans for all the age groups from 13 to 16, and every coach had to deliver his session plan every week for a certain amount of months to how he wanted it. And I was like, what are those coaches actually, what are they getting out of it, but what can they actually bring to that then? It's going to be really hard, because the head of head of youth development expects this, he wants this, and I know he's a stickler. If you step out of what his session plan is, he's not going to be happy. So it was quite a difficult one, and I remember feeling so sorry for those coaches in a way, because the head of foundation where I was working was like, yeah, you just follow along, but do what you need to do. But yeah, these coaches had to literally follow his session plan to the absolute letter, and they were all robots. And as much as it was great for those players because they were all consistent, right across those age groups, it was then difficult for the coaches week in, week out, because they were just like, there's your session plan, you now have to deliver it. And sometimes following someone else's session plan can be really difficult.
Definitely, and that's one of the things. If you look online and you find a practice, and you think, oh yeah, but see, like especially on Twitter, you see all Man United's practice or Bayern Munich finishing practice, and you think, well, that's for a men's first team. So if I'm doing that with under 12s, it's not going to have the same outcomes. It's not going to work the same. But we're quite lucky, and we've got a syllabus. We've got some key performance indicators, things we want to work at. But apart from that, we're kind of left to our own devices in terms of how we want to put the session together. He might listen to this and sort of blow his trumpet a little bit, but I've got a really good technical director who does some good stuff, helps us out, and yeah, it's good. But at the same time, he lets us have our own head of steam and do what we want to do, which is massive for a coach. Because I think, I say, if you're a coaching robot and you're just following someone else's sessions, that would kill me, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely, and but you want to get as much out of coaching as the players get out of playing, because we're there to enjoy it as well. As much as it can be at times a job when we are being paid to do it, we want to enjoy it, and that's what it came back down to. Why I stepped away from the academy, because I just wasn't enjoying it, and I knew I had to step away to regenerate myself and go away into grassroots coaching, where I currently still was doing over the years, and just enjoy being with the team that I had, enjoy being with the players, just get back to doing what we wanted to do, and there was nothing set in stone for what we wanted them to do, but we could just enjoy being week to week, adapting things, changing things. If they wanted to do shooting, let's do shooting, because that's what they enjoy the most, and they're going to get fun. And when they're leaving with smiles on their face, let's get them leaving with smiles on their face. Where that was more of the enjoyment pathway, rather than those KPIs that we're speaking about, where we have to achieve this, this, and this, and suddenly that intense session comes in, and it can be difficult. But again, it comes down to understanding those players and getting that right balance, which is really important. And once we're able to progress as coaches and learn on our own way, we understand the players better than someone who's full time, because we work with them closer than someone who's full time who gets to see them every now and then, or looks at their name on a bit of paper. And that's what creates a team, and that's what creates a program. Because when you get coaches like ourselves who understand the players so much, and even can read them as soon as they walk into a session, or they're not in a good place today, or he's a little bit hyper, how can we change this? Once we understand our players, we create a cohesive pathway and program without even setting out to do so, because we're all so committed to these players.
Yeah, and that is a big thing. Is getting to know your players. I've been quite lucky with the group I'm working with now. So I coached Matt, literally the first couple come along when I was coaching under 12s. They were under 10s playing up near the end of the season. Coached them for 2 years through under 11s, under 12s, and I moved up to 16s. And then I've gone and I'm coaching them again under 14s this season. So I know these players really well. And I'm still learning, and I still love asking those questions. And so one of the players went on holiday to Japan the other week, and it was like, how was it, and stuff like that. And I think the players, I'm not doing it just for the players to think that I'm what's the word? I'm more engaged with them, and I'm interested because I actually am. In fairness, it's good seeing these players' journey and getting to know them and what they like and what they don't like and stuff like that. And especially obviously the best one is obviously always football teams, isn't it? Like one of the players, it's Tottenham against Leeds this weekend. I'm a Leeds fan and she's a Tottenham fan, so Monday session could be quite interesting depending on who wins. But yeah, stuff like that, and like this weekend we've got players playing for the county, so it'd be interesting Monday to see how they got on, how the county played and stuff like that. So yeah, no, that player part of it really is massive, massive for me.
And it's that psychosocial element, realistically, because just asking a question, or how was your holiday, or how was today, or what did you get up to on the weekend, can just really engage a player and create that relationship and bond. And just, if they come in going, oh, I've got to come into this session again, and especially when they're in the academy and they're like, right, we've got to focus, we've got to be determined, all those expectations. But if you just come in and you just say, oh, how was your day, it can really change their mindset just by one question. And they can approach a session with that focus and mindset, but not be so intense and try to get their enjoyment outcome. And they're going to enjoy it a lot more if they have that relationship with the coach, as we say.
Yeah, definitely. That social corner is massive, especially with girls' football as well. On Thursday, the coach we work with, we do classroom sessions, and normally I wouldn't say boring, but it's normally quite a little bit more serious, where it's tactical analysis and breaking down game footage and stuff like that. So this week we just did a social one. It's a game where you put a name or an animal on your head, and the other player's got to give you clues so you guess it. And it was just the social outcomes were absolutely fantastic. You got players who are more reserved members of the group who are really bubbly and enjoying it, and there was players literally crying with laughter. And in fairness, I was crying with laughter myself. It was that fun, and it was nice to see because it can't be all serious. It's got to be enjoyable, which also keep on linking back to. But I said it is such an important thing for me, to be honest with you.
And once you hamper in that message, even to when you're with your players and you're in your sessions, enjoyable, 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 like you have done this morning during this interview, that's the key elements which will naturally come out over time. And once we start hampering that in, it can create a great environment and a great context and really bring everyone together in terms of when we are working with players and their parents, what the expectations are, to understanding what we want for them, which is, that enjoyability and those outcomes, which they, at the end of the day, that's all parents want for their kids, is for them to enjoy it, and they want to make sure they're with the right coaches in the right environment. And if they go off and choose transfer teams because they want to be on the league winning team, that's down to them. But at the end of the day, they know if they're not enjoying being in that league winning team, they want to come back, then it's for all the right reasons, which they wouldn't have had if they left for somewhere else, if their environment wasn't about that enjoyability. But when you are having those serious sessions, just having a laugh and making players smile and getting what we need to get out of it, as well as having that enjoyment out of it, is really important. And not everything has to be so serious. And it's all down to our other approaches, and it goes back to something which you tweeted. It's really poor whenever coaches look down on other coaches because of the level they coach at or who they coach for. And we do get looked down on because we are coaching at different levels, and just because we approach our players differently, and because you might be a UEFA A but I'm a UEFA B, and you're a level 1, doesn't mean that I'm better than you and you're then better than me. We should all be one community. I remember when I started out as development centre coach, and I was walking in, and the other coaches used to say, "Oh, there's the academy coaches," and you could just feel the intenseness and then the disconnection between DC and the academy coaches, because we were obviously on our C's, and some were leaders, and then the academy coaches were typically B's and A's. But there was this real we shouldn't talk to them because they're UEFA B's and UEFA A's. It was just madness. I just remember going, "Is this what academy football is?"
Yeah, I've seen it, and I've had it sort of in the past where, I've been looked down on, and I've seen other coaches be looked down on, and I think obviously I've got that different perspective where I coach at all sort of different levels. So for me, as I said, it doesn't really matter. I've seen B and A licensed coaches who, great, they've got great technical and tactical knowledge, but players don't engage with them. Their sessions just seem dull as dishwater. Where I've seen level 1 and level 2 coaches who are bouncing, bubbly, the players absolutely love it. And, at the end of the day, yes, coaching badges are important to a certain extent, but they're not the be all and end all. And I think that other side of it, that people person side of it, is just as important, to be honest with you, especially if you want to really improve players.
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't come back down to it, but when we're in that pathway, you're UEFA B now. Is UEFA A the sort of next step, or are you happy being at UEFA B?
To be honest with you, I was maybe going to apply to this year, but I thought, I'm pretty stable financially, but really, could I justify spending sort of £4+ grand on a course? And it's like, but it's something I would love to do eventually, but it's not. It doesn't define me, realistically. I know it's tough because a lot of coaches who have not done this sort of UEFA B will say, well, I suppose you need that to get into certain positions, and that is true. But at the same time, as I said, it's not the be all and end all. At the end of the day, I think you can learn, especially with all the outlets out there, like social media, like the internet, like books. You can learn most of the stuff that you'll learn on licenses anyway, to be honest with you. And you can get into environments where you're working with coaches who are higher up, then that helps as well. Obviously, my technical director is an A licensed coach, so I've learned quite a lot from him for the last few seasons. So if you're a level 2 coach and you get into a development centre and there's a level B coach there, B licensed coach there, then potentially you can learn stuff off them without having to do the course. So courses it's great. It's nice to have a B licence or an A licence, but it's not the end of the world, is it, at the end of the day?
No, of course not. But it is difficult, as you say, to try and justify that money. I know that I want to do the A, but it's then, do you justify the amount that it costs? And I remember starting my B, and one of the mentors said, it doesn't matter if you fail your B, you can just do it again. What, at the cost of £500 a time? I know we get it discounted in Wales because we're Welsh coaches, whereas if someone from England was to pay for it, it'd be £1,000. But okay, yeah, let's just say I fail it at £500. Okay, I'll just pay another 500. Well, that's £1,000 already before you pass your B. And I understand it's the same as uni, and other qualifications when you have to be competent, that you have to meet the outcomes, etc. But I feel when you're paying that amount of money, you're on a coaching pathway, and coaching is all about growing and developing. If you're coming out and we're doing a bit more mentoring, we're doing a bit more sessions, we can see that there's progress, and you're starting to tick other boxes over a series of months rather than, oh, here's your free sessions, you have to deliver this, and you have to meet this, and you have to get that out by the end of this date. Then I feel that we get so many more coaches through, and we could have then, as they want, more A licensed coaches and start bringing up the quality of the game, because then there will be more support, as we say, and it goes back to that point earlier. If there's more mentoring available, then there could be so many more opportunities. But it's interesting to look at what other countries do abroad, and the cost of these coaching courses here compared to others. It's just madness here in Britain.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It's about Iceland, and I can't quote the figures off the top of my head, but for the size of the population, the amount of A and B licenses, percentages per player is a lot higher. Where I don't think it's necessarily the case they're trying to keep it extremely exclusive in the UK. But if there's like 50 odd A license spots every year, you're not bringing up loads of coaches. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is upskilling the workforce to upskill the players. So by keeping the numbers really low, I don't see the benefit of that, to be honest with you.
And it creates that wedge, as I said earlier. If you're one of the lucky 50 and then suddenly you've got your A and you're one of those who qualified and then we're all like B licensed coaches, then it just creates that world of that difference between connectivity and when coaches start looking down of like, oh, look at me, I'm one of the 50, you didn't get on. And you do get coaches like that, and the coaching world can be so horrible. And I know many of the other coaches that I spoke to on the Coaching Insight series for the podcast, they've said quite a lot of similar things where coaches don't connect, and we should be sharing resources, we should be more open, we should be more of a community, and it's not always that, and it can be so difficult when we're just trying to do the same thing, and that's coach players.
Yeah, I get a bit of banter from my Twitter use, but Twitter is such a fantastic platform. Didn't they like the Sunday share? In like the sort of, I presume it's about a year and a half, 2 years now since Lee started it. It's up to nearly 10,000 people now, and the amount of good stuff on there every week, and that's coming from level 1 coaches sharing, A licensed coaches sharing. So it's just one community. It's not dependent on the badge you've got or who you coach for. And the amount of people who said, who've either DM'd me or I've seen them and spoke to them, and they said, "Oh, it's such a fantastic resource. I take something from it every week," and that's brilliant. That's what it's all about. And that's where I suppose Twitter's made it so much less secret squirrel. Because when I first started, I wasn't on social media. It was a lot more. Well, I've got the coach. I've got the answer to, or they think they've got the answer. And actually, in fairness, all we're trying to do is improve our players. At the end of the day, if I can give something to another coach that can help improve their players, then that's brilliant.
And if we can share and do more sharing and caring, then we're going to progress more players and be more united and just have those conversations. They don't have to be intense. They don't have to be reviews or evaluations as such where we're sat down and we're critiqued. Just having those conversations and going, you know what, you could use that, or here I've got this, can really be helpful. I know that's what I try to do with the coaches at the Grassroots club that I was at. I just wanted to support them as much as possible and give them the platform and anything that they needed. And in the same way as I would want something given to me if I was to seek the support that I wanted. But the more that we can come together, the more that we can have that bigger impact and create that community, as we say, especially through Twitter, because it's such a useful resource. And the networking and meeting yourself, which like I have, it is such a wonderful community once you start to find it in the right places.
Yeah, this is it. And there is a little bit of negativity. You see bits where a coach will put something on there and they'll get, drilled because of it and stuff like that. I know there was one where there was I don't know, somewhere in London, I think it was like a boys JPL team or something, they were doing the bleep test and there were people just absolutely destroying them for it. But I suppose context to a certain extent, there's some things that aren't justifiable, but I think you really need to know the context of what people are doing before you really start sort of going on them, I think, to be honest with you. But on the whole, it is a positive platform. Everything outside of coaching seems to be just like a cesspool, to be honest with you. And I try to stick clear to anything that's not coaching related, because if you cross over to like politics or COVID or anything like that, you're like, no, it's just. I just try to keep to the sort of coaching bubble, to be honest with you.
And I've seen that politics side where I've been in the academy and things like that, and I know that I remember looking back once, and we were moved to a different location. I just started, and we had half a pitch for a pre-acad, and then we were going to be split in half again. So we had a quarter of a pitch to work with 10 players, and I was like, right, I'm going to use a quarter of this quarter because I've got 10 6-year-olds. I don't need that much space. I want them quite close. I want them working with the ball. I know what I'm going to do to adapt next week. I know if I need to pull out the space, I can. And I planned the session knowing the players. And I remember then one of the dads kicked off, rang up his cousin who was actually in charge of the academy at the time. He was like, we were told during briefing that we were going to have a full pitch. I was like, we don't even need a full pitch, let alone half a pitch here. He kicked off, and then the academy manager had to come up then he moved the other age group off the side of the pitch, and then we had full 3G capacity every week. I was like, what, for 20 under 7 kids? We don't need this much space. And it came down to politics, because he was like, right, the academy manager's my cousin, I'm going to ring him, I'm going to get him up here because I want more space. I was like, right, do you know how much space? leading on this session. Do you realise that we don't need this much space? Why are you obsessed with space for under sevens? Yes, I get it. We talk about spacing out. Yes, we want them to run with the ball. Yes, we want them to have freedom. But we don't need a full-size pitch. And it just became political in that sense because it was like, who knows who, or the academy manager's coming up, or we're going to receive criticism, but I'm going to pull rank on you because of who my cousin is. And I was like, what? It shouldn't be that way.
No, it does seem a little bit bonkers, doesn't it, in fairness? But no, we're quite lucky facility-wise, absolutely brilliant. We've got 3G pitches. But I think as well as that, when you train on 3G all the time, when you go and play on grass, then suddenly it's like a different world. So I quite like playing on grass because everything on 3G, the bounce is exactly the same. There's no bobble on the pass or stuff like that. You haven't really got to watch the ball into your foot as much. So I actually really love going onto grass pitches. Obviously not if they're an absolute, and we played on some that are terrible over the years. But yeah, I do. In a way, I prefer grass to 3G, to be honest with you.
I know when I first started out, the club that I had, their facilities became an all-play football ground, and they took over through an community interest because play football shut down. And we have 3G available, but then we had to pay because of the community aspect. It was quite complicated, became quite political. But all in all, we paid for it. And I ended up coaching on 3G all the time, and I was like, no, we're not going on grass, we're going to stay on the 3G. And then I moved to a different club, and then we had no 3G, and it was like on grass. But at times I remember like pulling goals out and stepping in dog muck, and your hands are covered in stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't miss this. But over time then, as I've adjusted and started coaching on grass more, I much prefer coaching on grass. I know at the moment where we're winter training, we're on a 3G on a Monday night. I can't wait to get back to our home ground on the midweek session just to get back on the grass, because I prefer being on our grass at home than on the 3G where I am at the moment on a Monday.
Yeah, that's the only thing that does wind me up. There's like a local pitch that my grassroots team use in the summer, and you get companies go down like dog walking companies, and they just let the dogs mess everywhere and just don't even pick it up. And you think it's just unbelievable. You think that's a football pitch. You've got to know people are going to play football on there, and just the mindset of some people to let their dogs do that and not pick it up is that's the only thing. But that's the good thing about 3G. You ain't got to worry about that.
Absolutely, and I remember when I went to the second grass group club I was at, amazing council fields, loads and loads and loads of space. There was enough for rugby, loads of football. You could have hundreds and hundreds of kids on there at one time, and on a Saturday we'd have endless amount of space that we wanted to pick from, which was amazing. But it was so difficult because it is a council pitch and it isn't maintained, and suddenly you get dog walkers and people riding bikes over it, and then it becomes trash. You're like, if this club was just allocated some grass space, it was fenced off and it could be theirs, this club could really grow and the space could be utilised, etc. But it's hard to sort of get that balance in between community and what the club needs. But honestly, when you're walking through it and you put your foot in it, it was the worst thing ever. I remember as a kid I had a lush pair of F50s, and then I remember seeing a pair of Umbro boots in Sports Direct. I bought them for a tenner with some pocket money because they were black and gold. I thought, oh, these are wicked boots as a kid. But I had a lush pair of F50s, didn't realise what they were at the time, and I stepped in dog muck. And my dad was like, right, you've got to clean these for next week. So I just picked them up and I just put them in the bin. And honestly, I look back now, I was like, what was I even doing? Because they had dog muck on them as a kid. I was like, just get rid. But these F50s, I just launched them in the bin. And I was like, looking back now, I was like, they could be such a great pair.
Yeah, so when you see people like with old school Predators and stuff like that, and you think, oh, if I sort of kept some of the boots I had when I was a bit younger. But that's my only sort of weakness is I do love football boots, and I've got quite a few pairs, to be honest with you. But it's like and the missus would be like, well, why do you need so many pairs of football boots? And I'd be like, well, why do you need so many handbags? She's got a wardrobe full of handbags. But yeah, it's something I just a really good pair of football boots is something for me. But that's my only sort of weakness. I'm not a big drinker or a gambler or anything like that, but I do like football boots.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they're being used and you're getting so much satisfaction out of them. You're going to get more satisfaction out of a pair of football boots than half hour of drinking or being hungover the next morning. But I know that I got a couple of pairs of boots, and they're the same pair of boots that I've had for 10 years now, and I just bought some Kaisers and I've got some Coppers, and I've had some other pairs over the last 2 or 3 years, but I'll still wear this pair that I've had for 10 years because they've become the most comfiest pair of boots that I own.
Yeah, yeah. But that's where a nice pair of Copper Mundials. I bought the custom blackout ones for this season with the shortened toes. It's just like you're wearing slippers. They are so comfortable. It's unbelievable. But I quite like it when you see players with black boots as well. It's never something I'm going to say you're going to have to wear black boots or something like that. But you've got to rate a player who turns up in a pair of Puma Kings or Copper Mundials or something like that. It's like, yeah, you've got to love that. In fairness.
Right.
No, but don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't mind the jazzy boots, but obviously I wasn't good enough as a player to wear them. To be honest with you.
No, I was exactly the same, and I remember wearing this one pair of boots to a coaching session, and the other coach was like, "Oh, having a game with you. You must be good if you're wearing them." I was like, "No, they're just comfy boots," and yeah, it comes. And I remember when I used to be younger, I had a bit of a superstition against black boots. And I was like, if I wear black boots, I naturally slow down. And it was just a weird superstition, psychological thing that I had. But now I've got older, I tend to wear more black boots than I do in any other colour now.
Yeah, obviously with the academy football, it's kind of unwritten rule that you kind of wear black boots. But yeah, it's one of those things as well. It's like linking back into that part of it. It was something that was discussed the other day. I see about obviously demos and stuff like that. And when I used to play, I was a very limited fullback / centre back, so I'd get a nosebleed if I went over the halfway line. And last night we were doing a session, we had a work experience girl there, and I said it was 1v1 attacking, which, in all honesty, when I played, I never beat a player 1v1 attacking in my life, to be perfectly honest with you. I said, are you any good at 1v1 attacking? She's like, yeah, it's all right, you're doing the demos tonight. Only joking, but yeah, it's one of those things as a coach where I can do demos if it's it's passing and stuff like that. But yeah, attacking 1v1s was definitely not my strong suit, to be honest with you.
I get that entirely, and if I can pinch on a player or get the other coach to do it, then I'll get them to do it because I wasn't the greatest of players, and I'm happy to admit that. But when we come to demos and they're like, right, I want to do this as a coach, but I'm not happy to demo it because I don't have the skill set, and then you get your players to do it, you're like, yeah, that's how it's done, and that's how I expect you to. Whereas when you go and do it and you completely fluff it up, you're like, oh no, I've done myself in front of the players, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite get a bit of banter from that as well, in fairness. But no, it's good. Like I said, I can break down the technical detail and I can show them quite a lot of stuff. But yeah, especially in terms of attacking 1v1s and different skills. Fortunately, the other coach is decent at that, so I'll leave that to him. The defending 1v1, stuff like that, obviously competent with. But yeah, that's an interesting one as a coach. And it links into that whole thing of ex-pros and non-pros sort of in coaching, which is obviously quite a touchy subject to a lot of people as well, which I find really fascinating. Because in fairness, if you're an ex-pro, you have got advantages. You're going to be good, because you have played at professional level. But as well as that, if you played at a good level, you've been in thousands of training sessions. So obviously, it does come down to how much you actually took on board. And if you're a bit, if you were just away with the fairies, not really listening, you might not take them too much. But having been in loads of high quality training sessions, getting loads of high quality coaching, I think probably is an advantage. And as well as that, you think that name recognition, like Jack Wilshere going to Arsenal as under 18s, all those players are going to go in there thinking, wow, that's someone that we got we got respect for him straight away because of what he's done in the game. But at the same time, on the flip side of that is the fact that if you're an ex-pro, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the people skills and the communication skills and that other side of coaching to be able to sort of relate to players and get your points across. So that's a fascinating subject, to be honest with you.
Completely. I remember when I first started my I had our old ex-academy manager, and he had left as I just started. But he was an ex-pro, and he had this level of arrogance about him, and just because he was an ex-pro and just because he had a UEFA Pro license, and he became my mentor, and I was like, oh no. And then it got to a point where he just stopped turning up for mentoring. He just, I remember he'd done my session, watched it, went, yeah, that could have been better, just walked off, and then started watching the session on the other pitch. And it was nothing to do with what we'd done on the B. And then when he left, I received so much more support from someone who wasn't a UEFA Pro coach and was just a mentor and tutor, but they were amazing, and I learned so much off them rather than who this ex-pro was, because he was just arrogant, and he was like, right, yeah, you're not ex-pro, so you're not going to make that good of coaches in a sense at times. And I just, if I had him as a mentor, I knew I wouldn't have passed my B. And this level of arrogance off him, I remember, was just so difficult, and I was really panicking when it came to my assessment days. And I was so lucky that he stopped in and that, because then my mentor changed to someone who was completely amazing. Always wanted to ring me. Always said, "Ring me when you want to do something," and just gave me time. And I remember. Came up to my assessment day on a Sunday. I'd emailed my session plan well in the week to try and get some feedback, and then he emailed me Saturday night. Yeah, looks okay. We will discuss tomorrow. And then we just went straight into my assessment, and I was like, "What? You give me no support or feedback," and it was just difficult. So I remember getting out of that quite lucky, where he stopped in and that, and it worked to my advantage.
Yeah, massive. I was really lucky with my B license. I had Des Buckingham, who he was with Stoke, I think, at the time, and then he went to New Zealand. He was New Zealand under 21s or 23s coach, and now he's coaching a team in the Indian Premier League. But such a nice bloke. He would have phone calls where he'd phone me up and a sort of 45-minute conversation about coaching. Even now, so he's in India, but he'll still drop me a DM every now and again with stuff, and that support is absolutely massive. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, supporting coaches, and supporting coaches who are maybe lower down the line from you, and sending that lift back down to help coaches who are following your footsteps.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. And if we can do that and connect more and share and grow, then that's what it's been about. And I know you're quite vocal on your Twitter, and you share quite a lot of good resources, and you initiate quite a lot of good discussions and give a lot of good reflection points. And I know that you're very reflective in what you do. And it's great to see your Twitter. I love looking at it. I love browsing through it and things that you post. And there are some good conversation points and things that I then think about. But having conversations like this, as much as for a podcast, we are essentially networking and sharing ideas, or getting feedback, or just having discussions around coaching. And that's what I love actually about talking to every coach or anyone who's involved in the game that has come on as part of the Coaching Insight series. So I know that it's been great to connect to you. I know it's been great to get you on, especially on a Saturday around watching the cricket and away from football. And it can, your wife might go on at you in terms of what, more football or another interview. It's like, yeah, that's the way it is. That's the football world for you. But it's been great that I could finally speak to you. It's been great that I could get you on, and I appreciate speaking to you, and I appreciate everything that you've had to say, and it's given me a lot of things to think about. And but yeah, I've really enjoyed speaking to you, Rob, and I hope you take care. But it's great that we're connected now, and our messages are open to each other for whenever we need.
Yeah, definitely. No, I've really enjoyed it. At the end of the day, nothing better than speaking about coaching, is there? It's really Absolutely. Is the best in fairness. But no, really enjoyable last hour. Brilliant.
Amazing, no worries. But I hope you have a great rest of the weekend, and hope to speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Right, thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.